Hey, today we're going to make sure these tires fit up inside this step-side box I'm working on. Well, we got tires and wheel combo on here. We need to make sure that they are going to fit up inside of this step-side box and or fleet side box. And we'll take some measurements and I'll give you guys the information I get out of it and hope that helps. All right, so we need to know the measurements of this to know if they're going to fit, how they're going to fit. So let's measure the inside. Inside, which isn't nearly important, is 53.5. And let's measure the outside. We're just using some straight edges here. So 78.5. And then what else did we need here? In and out, and then the box. All right, if anybody's interested in figuring out what a backspace is, get a straight edge, set it across the back of the wheel, and then just measure from the back of the wheel. Let me turn it over here so I can see better. Back of the wheel to there, and that is a, let's say 4 1/4. So that's a 15 by 10 with a 4 1/4 backspace. That's important because if you get a more backspace, it's going to put the wheel inward. Less backspace is going to set the wheel out. And if you're trying to get a wheel to tuck up inside of a fender, you don't want less backspace, you want more backspace. Unless you're trying to get the wheel to sit out, even with the fender, something like that. But that's important, we need to know that. And so trying to figure out if these tires and wheels are going to fit inside the fenders, we kind of need to know the backspace. Or if you're ordering wheels to fit in, that comes in play too. So anyhow, so that's a 4 1/4 inch backspace with 28, what did I say, 28 1/4, 28.5, outside to outside. So if we're going to sit really low and the fenders are coming down over the tire, we have to make sure they're going to clear and not rub on the sidewall. That's where we might have to clear the fenders by rolling them or cutting them out, trimming them. So we'll check that, get some measurements on the box, and we'll find out. All right, so the step side bed and the fleet side bed are probably a little bit different, and I don't know if that's true or not. So we're going to find out for sure. And we've got this hootenanny we made to check the measurements of the inside of the wheel well. Measuring it to the narrowest point. You got yours good? Okay. All right, let's pull that down. And I'll just hand that to you. Just put it on the outside. And that is 77 3/4. All right, take that. So 77 3/4, and those tires on the back of that pickup are, I had 78.5, but I want to double check that with a little help. So we'll double check that, make sure that is accurate. But the way it looks at 78.5, it's not going to fit 77 3/4. So this will have to be trimmed out quite a bit. I know the step side box will, and it was a lot narrower too. So we'll have to, in order to make this fit, this is going to have to be trimmed out. This side of the box, oh, actually, it's wider. The welds came undone. Welds came undone on that. So it's possible to make this a little wider. Let's double check that. I noticed that sticking out. I thought it was just a defect. And take that, hold that on your, no, back where you can get it on that rod. So this one's about 78 and a quarter. So they'd almost fit, but you don't want too tight, so you're still going to have to trim some just to get clearance. You probably want at least a 1/4 inch clearance on each side, I'm guessing. So looking at these, that's doable with a little bit of work. This, like I said, this side here can be pushed over a little bit more and re-welded, but there's lips on both of these sides that stick out. There's drain holes here that could be hammered back in a little bit to get clearance so the tires don't rub on that, and these edges could be trimmed off. You could try to roll them. Easiest thing to probably do would just be trim off a 1/4 inch or more if you can. Just have to see where you're at. You could always come in and measure from the inner part of the bed or the wheel well. You could always come in and try to measure that. Come out here, which is showing about 14 over here. I bet it's a little more on this side. Yeah, it's a little less. It's 14. So then you could try to measure this part to kind of get you some numbers, but it steps down here, so it's going to be a little funky. This was the best way and easiest way for us to measure it, was just to build a little measuring stick, an micrometer. So let's go check the other. The Fleetside box was 77 3/4 to 78, depending on, your box is going to vary just the way they weld those inner fenders in. So you're going to be right around there. Either way, even at 78, it's still too narrow, so you're going to have to trim off minimum 1/2 inch off each side of those inner fenders. You probably should go for 3/4, maybe an inch, just to make sure you don't, in cornering, the tires aren't going to rub. Especially if you get a load or a compression in your suspension in a corner, you just don't want them rubbing. So you need to get more than enough clearance. And the Stepside box, we'll check that out. I know I need to trim it. I know it's not enough. Okay, so we measured that box because I had a couple people asking about tire fitment in that box. And so that's where we got those measurements there. What I really need to know is the measurements of this Stepside fender. Well, I already measured the outside of the box, which was 50 inches. So all I'm doing now is measuring a fender from the deck of my table to the inner part of the fender, and then I can just do a little multiplication on that and know where I'm at as far as my measurement. So I know that the tire distance on the outside of the tires on the pickup is 78.5-ish, right in there. So I need to know if this is if they're even going to clear on these fenders. I'm expecting they're going to have to be trimmed. There's just no way around it. So we will measure this, which looks like 13.5. And I think if I cut out some of that and roll the other part and get it clear up to 14.5, that's going to be what I need on both sides. That should be more than enough, because I want to get a minimum of 80. That gives me about a 1/2 inch on each side of clearance. Anything more than that's even better, because then if I ever change tire sizes or wheels, I'm going to have plenty of clearance. But as it is, the box itself was 50 inches wide, and this fender inner was 13.5, so that's 27. So that's 77 inches. And I know we need 78.5, so it's not near enough. So knowing what we know now, I know I'm going to get more than enough clearance, and I'm going to get maximum by trimming this and rolling that out. And then I won't have to worry about the inner fender cutting. By rolling it, I probably don't need to roll it to get the clearance, but rolling it, I won't have to worry about the tires cutting it or somebody jamming their fingers in there and cutting their fingers. That's just not cool. So we'll get this done, and then we know we're going to be good. And I can move forward on putting that box together. Today I'm going to take care of this inner lip. I'm afraid it's going to rub on that tire when I get this box all together and set on the pickup. So I want to cut this inner flange off a little bit and roll the inner fender in, just so I can get the clearance on that tire so I don't have any rubbing or potentially cutting the sidewall of the tire.
And I'm going to take care of that right now before I finish blocking all this. This fender's probably 80% done. I just need to do some final blocking and little touch-ups. But I'm going to start hammering on the back side of this lip, and I don't want to distort any of this outside. So we'll do this first, and then I can finish up my fenders for the back end and get all the box work done. And this is stopping me from going any further on the rear of the pickup. So I needed a little more room for the tire to fit up in here, so I cut off just about an inch, 3/4 of an inch of this inner flange. And now I'm gonna roll this all over here. Just putting a little pressure on the back so I got something to kind of back it. And then I'm just rolling this edge. I'm not trying to do it all at one time because I don't want to distort this line here. It may give it a little bow, which is fine, but I don't want to distort it. So I'm just working my way back and forth, ultimately rolling this center part here. And having this edge rolled, not pinched tight, it's still going to have some rigidity on this fender right in here, so it won't bend real easy pushing against it. There. I'm happy with that. There, you come in. You can see it's really tight. I don't know if you can see how tight it is. So it's about half the thickness of my finger. So that's about what that whole thing is about, before I start cutting, about 1.5 inches. And I cut, at least 3/4 of an inch off. So that was about 1.5 inches. So I actually gained a good inch on each side. So I have a good inch to spare. Okay, so I know what the measurements I need. We got everything trimmed out. Everything should fit just fine. I should have plenty of clearance on my wheels and tires fitting inside the fenders. And I got information to share with you guys. I hope it helps you. I know the information I got for myself is helpful. So I just need to get everything put together and painted and a little more sanding. I love sanding. Sanding is so much fun. So anyhow, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. We'll catch up with you guys later and see you next time. Bye.